I died at 19, choking on my own blood in a hospital bed while my sister Jessica smiled at the doorway. Not smiled at me, smiled at her phone, texting someone, probably Derek, probably making plans with money that should have been mine. The life insurance money from the accident she'd engineered so carefully that even I hadn't seen it coming until the brakes failed on that mountain road. Now I'm 17 again, sitting in my childhood bedroom, and Jessica just knocked on my door to tell me that Derek Harrison, my prom date, the boy I'd been crushing on for 2 years, had asked if she'd mind if he took her to prom instead. I told him I'd think about it, she said, twirling a strand of her honey blonde hair, the same shade our mother called spun gold, while mine was just mousy brown. I mean, I know you like him, Emma, but he said you two are just going as friends anyway. And honestly, he and I have so much more in common. We're both on student council. We both got into Princeton. I died before I ever got my Princeton acceptance letter. Jessica had stolen it from the mailbox, burned it, and told everyone I'd been rejected. Then she'd cried at my funeral about how tragic it was, that I died never knowing I was good enough. Take him, I said. Jessica blinked. In my first life, I'd cried. I'd begged. I'd called her a selfish bitch and she'd run to our parents, and they'd grounded me for a month, forcing me to apologize while she'd gotten a shopping spree for a new prom dress because I'd stressed her out. I'd gone to prom alone in a dress from Target while Jessica had arrived on Derek's arm in Marquesa. Really? She tried to hide her surprise, but I saw it flicker across her face. You're not mad? Why would I be mad? I smiled at her. You're right, you two are perfect for each other. She was still standing in my doorway, uncertain. She'd expected a fight. She'd wanted one. Jessica fed on drama the way sharks feed on blood in the water. Okay, well, thanks, Emma. You're being really mature about this. She turned to leave, then looked back. Oh, and Mom said you need to return that dress you bought. The blue one? She needs the credit card payment back. My prom dress ended up being more expensive than we thought. The dress I'd saved for 6 months to buy. The dress our mother had promised was mine to keep. But that was a fight for another day. Sure, I said. No problem. After she left, I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. I scrolled past Derek's profile. Star quarterback, student body president, Princeton bound, exactly the kind of boy Jessica collected like trophies, until I found the account I was looking for. Alexander Chen, cross-country captain, debate team legend, with dark eyes that held more intelligence than Derek could ever fake. In my first life, I'd barely known he existed. He'd been dating Jessica for 3 months leading up to prom, the mysterious boy she'd bragged about constantly but never brought home. She'd called him perfect and the one, and then, a week after I died, I'd learned from my ghostly vantage point that she'd dumped him the night after prom, the second she'd secured Derek's attention. Alexander had been devastated. I'd watched him from whatever liminal space the dead inhabit, this brilliant boy who'd actually loved my sister, who'd written her poetry and planned their future together. Jessica had laughed when she'd told her friends how clingy he'd been. I opened a new message. Hey, I know this is random, but I'm Emma Foster, Jessica's sister. I'm doing a feature for the school paper on student athletes balancing academics and sports. Would you be willing to be interviewed? The reply came faster than I expected. Sure. Tomorrow after practice, we can meet at the coffee shop on Main Street. I smiled at my phone. Phase 1, complete. The thing about dying and coming back is that you see everything so much more clearly. All those years I'd wasted trying to win my parents' love, trying to understand why Jessica hated me, trying to be good enough. I saw now that I'd never had a chance. It started the day I was born. My mother told the story at every family gathering, always with the same bitter edge to her voice. She'd been in labor for 19 hours with me. I'd been difficult from the start, arriving 3 weeks late, with complications that had prevented her from having more children. Then, 5 years later, my father's brother and his wife had died in a car crash, and suddenly there was Jessica, a perfect blonde cherub who looked just like our mother, who'd needed a home. God's way of giving us the daughter we were meant to have, my mother would say, usually after a few glasses of wine, usually when I was within earshot. Jessica was 5 when she arrived. I was 10. Old enough to be excited about a little sister, young enough to not understand I was being replaced. It was subtle at first. My parents had less time for my school events because Jessica needed help adjusting. My birthday parties got smaller because we needed to be sensitive to Jessica's grief. My college fund started shrinking because therapy was expensive and Jessica needed the best. By the time we were in high school, the pattern was set in stone. Jessica got designer clothes. I got Target clearance. Jessica got a car for her 16th birthday. I got driving lessons and permission to borrow the old Honda sometimes. Jessica's B plus was celebrated. My A was expected. When she made student council, there was a cake. When I made the honor roll for the 4th year in a row, my mother said, "That's nice, honey," without looking up from her phone. But I'd accepted it. I'd believed that if I just tried hard enough, was good enough, achieved enough, they'd finally see me. Then came the end of senior year in my first life. I'd gotten into Princeton, full academic scholarship, early admission, everything I'd worked for since freshman year. The letter had come on a Thursday. I'd run home from school to check the mail, my heart pounding, and there it was, the thick envelope. I never made it inside. Jessica had been getting the mail, too. She'd seen the Princeton logo through the window, and she'd understood what it meant before I did. "Give it to me," she'd said, her voice strange and flat. "Jess, this is mine." She'd snatched it from my hands and run inside, locking herself in her bathroom. By the time I'd gotten our mother to make her come out, the letter was ash in the toilet, and Jessica was crying, saying I'd rubbed my acceptance in her face, that I'd been bragging, even though I knew she'd been deferred from Princeton. The deferral that was actually a rejection, I'd learn later. The rejection she'd lied about to save face. My mother had believed her immediately. "How could you be so cruel?" she'd demanded. "Your sister is going through such a hard time, and you have to make it all about you." I didn't. I just came home to check the mail. "That's enough, Emma. Go to your room." I'd called Princeton the next day, begging them to send another copy of the acceptance letter. They'd said they would, but it would take a few weeks. Those few weeks had stretched on. I'd been so naive, thinking it was just bureaucracy. I'd had no idea Jessica had been intercepting the mail, that she'd been calling Princeton pretending to be me, saying I'd decided to attend another school. By the time I'd figured it out, I'd missed the enrollment deadline. I'd missed everything. That's when I'd started noticing other things going wrong. Money missing from my wallet. My homework disappearing before I could turn it in. The rumor that I'd cheated on the SATs, a rumor I could never trace back to its source, but that had cost me 3 other scholarships. And then the brakes had failed on a mountain road, and I'd been 19 and dying and in the hospital through the haze of pain medication. I'd heard Jessica on the phone saying, No, it's so tragic. But I think I should still go to that party tonight. Emma would want me to enjoy my life, you know." I'd died that night. And then I'd woken up 17 with 4 years of my life erased and all my memories intact. The first week back, I'd cried every night, convinced I was losing my mind. The second week, I'd started taking notes, documenting everything Jessica did, every lie my parents believed, building a case for what? Who would believe me? The third week, I'd realized the truth. No one would believe me. No one would save me. I would have to save myself. Alexander Chen was even more attractive in person than his photos suggested. He had an easy confidence, the kind that came from knowing exactly who he was and not needing to prove it to anyone. We met at the coffee shop the day after I'd messaged him, and within 5 minutes of talking about running and debate and the crushing pressure of college applications, I understood exactly why Jessica had wanted him. He was authentic, real, everything she pretended to be but wasn't. "So, this article," he said, stirring his coffee, "is it really about student athletes, or were you just looking for an excuse to meet me?" I'd been mid-sip and nearly choked. "What?" He grinned. "I'm not dating your sister anymore. Hasn't been official for a few weeks now, actually. She ended it pretty recently." He paused, something complicated crossing his face. "I thought maybe, I don't know, it felt weird when you messaged me, but in a good way, like maybe it was a sign." In my first life, they'd still been together at this point. This was new, different, a butterfly effect I hadn't anticipated. "What happened?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. Jessica had probably sensed Derek's interest and jumped ship early. She said she needed to focus on herself, on student council, on prom planning. He laughed, but there was pain in it. Then I saw her Instagram story yesterday. She and Derek Harrison posting about being prom dates. Guess she focused on herself for about 36 hours. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Derek was supposed to be my date, actually, until Jessica decided she wanted him. Alexander's eyebrows rose. She took your prom date? It's kind of a pattern with us. She takes what she wants. Our parents let her. I've learned to just let it go. That's messed up. Yeah, I met his eyes. It really is. We talked for another hour about books and music and the future, about his dreams of studying law and politics, about my plans for Princeton that I couldn't explain were actually memories of an acceptance letter I hadn't received yet, about his parents who'd immigrated from Taiwan and built a successful tech company, who had expectations he was both proud to meet and terrified of disappointing. When we finally stood to leave, he hesitated. Emma, I know this might be weird, but would you want to go to prom? With me, I mean. I know you probably have other plans, or maybe you don't want to go at all after what Jessica did, but yes, I said before he could finish. I'd love to. His smile was like sunrise. I spent the next week laying groundwork. I was good to Jessica, sweet even, helping her pick out jewelry for her prom dress, listening to her gush about Derek, acting like the perfect supportive little sister. I returned my blue dress as requested and let my mother take the credit back without complaint. And every night I planned. The thing about Jessica was that she had a tell. When she was hiding something, playing an angle, setting up a scheme, she got chatty, overly friendly. She'd come to my room and talk about nothing, fishing for information, trying to gauge what I knew. 3 days before prom, she came to my room and sprawled across my bed like we were best friends. So, I heard you're going to prom with Alexander Chen, she said, examining her nails. That's unexpected. He asked me. I said yes. He's my ex, Emma. You dumped him for Derek 2 weeks ago. Still, it's kind of shady to date your sister's ex. She looked at me directly then, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. People might talk. Let them. She wasn't used to this version of me. The one who didn't apologize, didn't defer, didn't shrink. She sat up, her expression shifting to concern, the fake kind she used when she wanted something. Look, I just want you to be careful. Alexander was really clingy when we dated. Like obsessive. He wrote me all this weird poetry and talked about our future like we were getting married. It was honestly kind of scary, and in my first life, I would have believed her. I would have canceled on Alexander, and Jessica would have won again. Thanks for the warning, I said, but I think I'll make my own judgment. After she left, I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder where I'd been collecting evidence. Screenshots of Jessica's social media posts, dates and times carefully documented. Photos of the letter she'd accidentally spilled coffee on. My recommendation letter from my English teacher that had been absolutely glowing until it was illegible. Receipts from my missing money that I'd found in her room, used to buy the shoes she was planning to wear to prom. But the crown jewel was simpler than all of that. A little notebook I'd found hidden in Jessica's desk drawer, where she tracked her schemes with the dedication of a military strategist. There were pages about me, plans to accidentally delete my college applications, ideas for spreading rumors, notes about which of my achievements to sabotage first. There were pages about Derek, how to get his attention, what to say to make me look bad in comparison, which of my insecurities to exploit. And there was a page about Alexander, dated from before she dumped him. She'd written, break up with AC 1 week before prom. Make it seem mutual, but make sure he's hurt. Then approach DH at the student council meeting. Play the newly single and vulnerable card. DH is attracted to rescue fantasies. This has to look natural. She'd planned it all, every cruel detail, just like she'd planned everything else. I photographed every page. The day before prom, I went to a salon 3 towns over and spent the money I'd been saving from my part-time job at the library. The stylist transformed my mousy brown hair into rich chestnut waves with subtle caramel highlights. I got my makeup done professionally, learned techniques I'd never bothered with before. I bought a dress, not from a department store this time, but from a small boutique, deep emerald green that made my eyes look like forest glass. When I came home, my mother did a double take. Emma, what did you do? Got ready for prom, I said simply. Jessica came down the stairs, took one look at me, and froze. I saw the moment she realized what I'd done. Not just the makeover, but the implications of it. I wasn't playing my role anymore. I wasn't the drab, forgettable sister who made her look better by comparison. You look different, she said slowly. Thanks, you look great too. It wasn't a lie. Jessica was objectively beautiful, her prom dress a stunning blush pink that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. But beauty, I'd learned, was the least important thing about a person. Prom night arrived with perfect spring weather. Alexander picked me up in his car. Not a flashy sports car like Derek's, but a reliable Tesla that belonged to his parents. He wore a classic black tux and brought me a corsage of white roses. You look incredible, he said. And the way he looked at me made me feel like he was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time in my life. My parents were in the living room when we came downstairs. My father barely looked up from his phone. My mother glanced at us, then did a double take similar to the one from the night before. Emma, you look very nice, she said, and I could hear the confusion in her voice. Her narrative didn't have space for me to be beautiful. Jessica and Derek arrived 20 minutes later. Derek did the classic double take when he saw me, his eyes widening before Jessica grabbed his arm possessively. She was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. We took photos in the backyard, parents fussing with cameras, everything wrapped in a veneer of normalcy. But I caught Jessica watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. Calculation and concern warring on her face, and in the car, Alexander reached over and squeezed my hand. You okay? You seem tense. Just thinking, I said, about how much better this timeline is than the last one. He laughed, thinking I was being metaphorical. If only he knew. The prom venue was decorated with twinkling lights and flowers, the theme, Enchanted Garden, brought to life with careful detail. Music pulsed through speakers as students arrived in their finest clothes, ready for one perfect night before everything changed with graduation and college. I'd been to this prom before. In my first life, I'd stood in the corner alone, while Jessica and Derek had been crowned prom king and queen, while everyone had taken photos and danced and celebrated, while I'd counted the minutes until I could leave and pretend the humiliation had been worth it. This time was different. Alexander was an incredible dancer. He made me laugh, kept me close, introduced me to his friends from the debate team and cross country. People who'd never noticed me before, who now saw me as the girl who made Alexander smile like that, who made him forget about Jessica. We were on the dance floor when Jessica found us. Mind if I cut in? She asked, her smile bright and fake. I want to borrow my sister for a minute. Alexander looked at me, checking if it was okay. I nodded, and he stepped aside gracefully. Jessica pulled me toward the edge of the dance floor, her grip tight on my arm. What are you doing? She hissed once we were out of earshot. Dancing with my date. What does it look like? You're trying to make me look bad, showing up here looking like that with Alexander after everything I told you about him. Everything you lied about, you mean? Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me. He's not obsessive, Jess. He's not clingy. He's actually incredibly kind and thoughtful. And you dumped him because Derek was shinier and more prestigious. You used him and threw him away, just like you use and throw away everything. You have no idea what you're talking about. I found your notebook. The blood drained from her face. What notebook? The one where you plan out your schemes. The one where you wrote out exactly how you were going to manipulate your way from Alexander to Derek. The one that has pages about sabotaging my college applications and making sure I never outshine you. I smiled at her. I photographed every page. She grabbed my wrist, hard enough to hurt. You're lying. Am I? I pulled my phone from my clutch and showed her a photo of one page, just enough for her to see her own handwriting. I have copies everywhere, Jess. Cloud storage, thumb drives, sent to an email address you don't know about. Try to delete them and they'll just multiply. What do you want? Her voice was shaking now, the mask slipping. Money? Is this blackmail? I don't want anything from you. I pulled my wrist from her grip. I just want you to know, that I've always known, even when I was too scared or too hopeful to admit it. You've been sabotaging me our whole lives because you're terrified that if people see us side by side without you cheating, they'll realize I'm just as good as you. Better, maybe. That's not the Princeton letter, Jess. My recommendation from Miss Peterson. The rumor about me cheating on the SATs, the money you stole from my wallet, the homework you disappeared, every single thing you've done to keep me down, I remember it all. She was crying now, mascara starting to run. You can't prove any of that. Maybe not all of it, but I can prove the notebook. I can prove the pattern. And I can make sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. Emma, please. I'm not going to, I said, cutting her off. I'm not going to show anyone the notebook or tell anyone what you've done because I don't need to. I stepped back, letting her see the confidence in my eyes, the certainty. You've already lost, Jessica. You just don't know it yet. I walked away, back to Alexander, who was waiting with 2 cups of punch and a concerned expression. Everything okay? He asked. Perfect, I said, and meant it. The prom king and queen crowns went to 2 seniors I barely knew, a popular couple who'd been dating since sophomore year. Jessica had been so certain she'd win, had planned her acceptance speech, had practiced her surprised face. When the names were announced and they weren't hers and Derek's, I saw something crack in her expression. Derek noticed too. He'd been watching me all night, I'd realized. Seeing me laugh with Alexander, seeing me confident and radiant in a way I'd never been with him. He'd made a mistake choosing Jessica, and he was starting to understand that. But the real climax came later, during the after-prom party at Hannah Lee's house. Hannah was student council president, Jessica's supposed best friend, and the person who'd been carefully planning this gathering for weeks. Everyone who was anyone would be there, including college friends home for the summer, including parents who'd be chaperoning, but mostly staying upstairs and out of the way. Alexander and I almost didn't go. We'd talked about just driving to the beach, watching the sunrise together, having our own perfect ending to the night. But I'd known we needed to be there. This was where everything would come together. Hannah's house was massive, sprawling across 2 acres with a pool and pool house lit up like a resort. Music played from professional speakers. A catering company had set up a spread that looked like something from a wedding. This was the party Jessica had been bragging about for months, the event where she'd planned to cement her social victory. We arrived an hour after it started. Alexander got pulled into a conversation with some of his debate team friends, while I found myself near the pool, watching the scene unfold around me. That's when I saw Marcus Wheeler. Marcus was a junior at Princeton, home for the summer, and someone I knew from my first life's memories. He was brilliant, ambitious, and he'd interned at my father's law firm last summer. He was also, crucially, Jessica's type, wealthy, connected, Ivy League. And he was talking to Derek and Jessica by the pool. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw Jessica's body language change. She leaned in, played with her hair, touched Marcus's arm while Derek stood there looking increasingly uncomfortable. This was Jessica's pattern, always looking for the next upgrade, the next status symbol to collect. I watched Derek's face as he realized what was happening. Watched him see what I'd seen, what Alexander had seen, what anyone who looked closely enough would eventually see. Jessica didn't love anyone but herself. 20 minutes later, Derek found me by the food table. Emma, can we talk? Sure, I said, keeping my voice neutral. He led me away from the main party toward the garden area where we could hear each other. The music faded to a distant thump as we walked. I made a mistake, he said without preamble, asking Jessica instead of going with you. I see that now. Derek, I was flattered, okay? She's Jessica Foster. She's gorgeous and popular, and she chose me. But tonight, the way you've been with Alexander, the way you're so different from the girl I thought I knew, I realized I never really saw you before. Not really. No, I agreed. You didn't. But I see you now. And Emma, I think we could be good together. I think I could make you happy. In my first life, this would have been a dream come true. Derek Harrison, wanting me, choosing me over Jessica. But I'd died and come back. And I'd learned that happy endings weren't about winning someone else's prize. They were about choosing the right partner for yourself. I am happy, I said gently, with Alexander. He saw me when no one else did, Derek. Not even you. But you should go back to the party, I said. Jessica's probably looking for you. He looked like he wanted to argue, but then his shoulders slumped. She's not. She's with that Princeton guy now. Didn't even notice when I left. I'm sorry, I said, and part of me meant it. Derek wasn't evil, just shallow, just human. He walked away, and I returned to the party to find absolute chaos unfolding. Jessica and Marcus were in the middle of what looked like an intense conversation. Derek had returned and was watching from across the pool, and Hannah, sweet, patient Hannah, who I'd learned in my first life had been secretly documenting Jessica's manipulations for years, was standing near the speaker system with her phone in hand. Can I have everyone's attention? Hannah's voice rang out through the speakers. The party quieted. People turned, curious. I want to talk about something serious for a minute. About bullying and manipulation, and how some people use others to get ahead. Hannah's voice was steady. Most of you know Jessica Foster. Student council, honor society, Princeton bound. She seems perfect, right? Jessica's face had gone white. Hannah, what are you doing? What I should have done a long time ago, showing people who you really are. Hannah's phone connected to the TV screen mounted on the pool house wall. And there, for everyone to see, were screenshots. Not from my photos. I'd never sent them to Hannah. These were Hannah's own screenshots, her own documentation. Text messages where Jessica had mocked other students behind their backs. Photos of Jessica's notebook where she'd planned her social manipulations. Voice memos where Jessica had coached other girls on how to spread rumors. An email chain where Jessica had deliberately sabotaged another student's student council campaign. You used me, Hannah said, her voice cracking. You used all of us. You acted like you were my friend while plotting how to make yourself look better. You turned people against each other for entertainment. And when Emma, your own sister, started getting attention tonight, you told me to handle it, to make sure she didn't embarrass the family. The party was dead silent. Everyone was staring at Jessica, watching her perfect facade crumble in real time. That's taken out of context, Jessica stammered. Is it? Hannah swiped to another image. An email from Jessica to Princeton from just last week. You tried to sabotage Emma's application. You called the admissions office pretending to be your mother and told them Emma had been caught plagiarizing. I have the phone records, Jess. I have everything. I hadn't known about that. Hadn't known Hannah had been building her own case, collecting her own evidence. In my first life, Hannah had stayed silent, swallowed her anger, let Jessica get away with everything. But this time, this timeline, something had changed. Maybe seeing me stand up to Jessica had given Hannah courage. Maybe it was simply that Hannah had reached her breaking point. Marcus stepped away from Jessica like she was toxic. Derek was already backing toward the house. Students were pulling out their phones, taking photos, recording video. By tomorrow, everyone at school would know. By next week, everyone at Princeton would know. Jessica looked at me across the pool, her eyes desperate. Emma, tell them. Tell them this isn't true. You're my sister. I could have said something, could have defended her, minimized the damage. In my first life, I probably would have. I'm your sister, I agreed quietly, and you've spent 17 years trying to destroy me. I turned and walked away, back to Alexander, who was waiting with open arms. Behind me, I heard Jessica start to cry, heard people murmuring, heard her world falling apart. I didn't feel happy exactly, but I felt free. The aftermath unfolded over the next few weeks like dominoes falling. Princeton reached out to Hannah, who provided them with all her evidence. They launched an investigation. Jessica's acceptance was under review, which was administrator speak for probably getting revoked. Our parents, confronted with undeniable proof of Jessica's manipulations, went through the 5 stages of grief. Denial first, claiming the evidence was fake, that Hannah had it out for Jessica, that I'd somehow orchestrated everything. Then anger. At me for not defending Jessica, for letting this happen. Bargaining. Maybe if Jessica apologized, if she got therapy, if we all just moved past this. Depression. Our mother crying in her room for days, our father silent at dinner. I didn't know if they'd reach acceptance. Honestly, I didn't care anymore. My Princeton acceptance letter came in mid-May, thick and beautiful and real. I held it in my hands, felt the weight of it, the reality of it. This time, no one could take it from me. Jessica saw me reading it. She'd lost weight, dark circles under her eyes, her shine completely gone. She'd withdrawn from school, finishing her coursework online to avoid the hallways full of former friends who'd turned their backs. "Congratulations," she said, her voice hollow. "Thank you. I'm going to community college for now. Princeton said I could reapply in a year if I complete their ethics program and therapy." She laughed, a broken sound. "A year of proving I'm not a sociopath, basically." "That's probably good," I said. "For you, I mean, the therapy." "You knew," she said suddenly, "at prom. You knew Hannah was going to do that." "I didn't," I said honestly, "but I knew something would happen eventually. Because that's what happens when you hurt people, Jessica. Eventually, it catches up to you." She left without another word. Graduation came and went. I gave the valedictorian speech, the one that should have been mine even in my first life, but that I'd lost due to a mysterious grade change in calculus that had later been traced back to Jessica's hacking. My parents came, sat in the audience, applauded politely. They'd aged 10 years in 2 months. Alexander was there, cheering louder than anyone when I walked across the stage. His parents were there too, having invited me to their house for dinner 3 times already, treating me like I mattered. That night, after the ceremony, Alexander and I drove to the beach. The same beach where in my first life, I'd never made it. We sat on the sand watching the waves, his arm around my shoulders. "Princeton won't know what hit them when you arrive," he said. "You'll be there too, at Yale. We'll only be a couple hours apart." "I'm counting on it." He turned to face me, his expression serious. "Emma, I know we've only been together a few months, but I need you to know that this isn't just a high school thing for me. You're not just a rebound from Jessica. I know," I said. "You're not a revenge date for me either. You're real. This is real." He kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I thought about how in my first life, I died never knowing what it felt like to be truly seen by someone. To be chosen not because I was convenient or available, but because I was me. Summer passed in a golden haze. I worked at the library, saved money for school, spent my free time with Alexander. We took road trips, watched stars from the bed of his truck, planned our futures with the earnest certainty of 18-year-olds who thought they had it all figured out. Jessica moved out in July, going to stay with our mother's sister in California. "A fresh start," our mother called it. I called it running away, but I didn't say it out loud. There was no point anymore. My father came to my room the night before Jessica left. He stood in the doorway, uncertain, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "I'm sorry," he said, for not seeing, I should have protected you." "Yes," I agreed, "you should have." "I don't know how to fix this." "You can't," I said, "but you could try not making it worse." He nodded slowly. "Princeton is lucky to have you. I know I never said it before, but I'm proud of you, Emma. I always should have been." It wasn't enough. It would never be enough to make up for 17 years of neglect and favoritism. But it was something. August came, and with it, move-in day at Princeton. Alexander helped me load my car. His parents contributing items my parents hadn't thought to buy. Extra blankets, a reading lamp, a coffee maker for late-night study sessions. My mother made an appearance, hugged me stiffly, told me to be good. I didn't know what that meant anymore. I'd been good my whole life, and it had gotten me nowhere. Being smart, being strong, being willing to fight for myself, that's what had saved me. The campus was more beautiful than I'd remembered from my brief, ghostly observations in my first life. Red brick buildings covered in ivy, students moving in with their families, excitement and nerves crackling in the air. This was real. I was here. I'd made it. My roommate was a girl named Priya from Chicago, pre-med, with an infectious laugh and a love of true crime podcasts. We bonded immediately over our shared hatred of entitled rich kids who thought the world owed them everything. "I had a stepsister like that," I told her. helping her hang string lights around her side of the room. Spent my whole life in her shadow. Not anymore, though. Good for you, Priya said. Life's too short to let people dim your light. If she only knew how right she was. 6 months into my freshman year, I got a Facebook message from Derek Harrison. He was at Duke, studying business, and apparently had been thinking about that night at prom. Hey, Emma, I know this is random, but I wanted to apologize. For not seeing you, for choosing Jessica, for being an idiot, basically. You were right. I was shallow. I'm trying to be better. Anyway, I hope Princeton is treating you well. You deserve it. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Thanks, Derek. I appreciate that. Good luck at Duke. I didn't tell him I forgave him. I wasn't sure I did. But I also didn't hold on to the anger anymore. He was just a boy who'd made a stupid choice, and I was a girl who'd been reborn and remade, and our paths had diverged the moment I decided to stop being a victim. Alexander visited me twice a month, making the drive from Yale with dedication that never wavered. We studied together in the library, explored the campus, talked about our classes and our futures. He wanted to go into political law, fighting for campaign finance reform. I was thinking about psychology, maybe therapy, helping people who'd been through what I'd been through. You'd be amazing at that, he said one night, lying on my dorm room floor eating pizza. You understand people. You see them. I see their pain, I corrected. I see when they're hurting and pretending they're not. That's the same thing, isn't it? Maybe it was. I saw Jessica one more time, a year after prom. She was back in our hometown for Christmas, having completed her first semester at community college. She looked different, less polished, more real somehow. She'd cut her hair short, stopped wearing designer clothes, seemed almost humble. We ran into each other at the grocery store. Literally, I turned a corner with my cart and there she was. Emma, she said, surprise and wariness warring on her face. Jessica. How's Princeton? Good, really good. How's school? It's different, humbling. She looked down at her cart, full of generic brands and sale items. I'm working part-time now, at the mall, retail. It's helping with tuition. That's good, I said, and meant it. I'm in therapy. Real therapy, not just the Princeton-mandated stuff. Dr. Morrison, she's making me look at things I never wanted to see. Jessica's eyes met mine. I was so jealous of you, Emma, my whole life. You were the real daughter, the biological child, and I was just a replacement for the child they couldn't have. I thought if I could be better than you, perfect enough, they'd love me more. They did love you more, I said quietly. That was never in your head. I know, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough because it wasn't about love. It was about fear. I was so afraid that one day they'd realize they didn't need me, that they'd send me away like... She stopped, took a breath. Like my real parents left me when they died. I'd never thought about it that way. Had never considered that Jessica's cruelty might have come from her own pain, her own fear of abandonment. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she continued. I don't deserve that. But I want you to know I'm trying. To be better. To understand why I did what I did and make sure I never do it again. Okay, I said. Okay. I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I believe that you're trying. I met her eyes. That's enough for now. We parted ways in the cereal aisle, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of letting go. Spring semester of freshman year, I got a call from Princeton's admissions office. Miss Foster, this is Dean Richardson. I wanted to reach out personally to discuss something unusual. My heart jumped. Is something wrong? On the contrary, we've been reviewing your file, particularly in light of last year's investigation into your sister's interference with your application. We've discovered several other instances where your achievements were underreported or sabotaged, including a recommendation letter that was altered before reaching us. I'd known about the letter, Jessica's coffee accident, but I hadn't known they'd found out. We've corrected your file to reflect your actual accomplishments, the dean continued. Your GPA should have qualified you for our presidential scholarship program. We'd like to award you that scholarship retroactively, plus compensation for the stress and harm caused by your sister's actions. What? It's a full ride plus a living stipend for all 4 years, Miss Foster. You earned it. We should have given it to you from the start. After the call ended, I sat in my dorm room and cried. Not sad tears, not even happy tears exactly. Just release. All those years of fighting, of struggling, of never being quite enough. And now someone was saying I'd been enough all along. More than enough. I'd been extraordinary, and my family just hadn't wanted to see it. Sophomore year, I moved into an apartment with Priya and two other girls from our dorm. Alexander transferred to Princeton. His parents' company had opened a new office in New Jersey, and it made sense for him to be closer to home. He never said it was because of me, but we both knew. We studied together, ate together, built a life together. He met my pain with understanding, never pushed me to reconcile with my family, never suggested that forgiveness was required for healing. You get to decide what your family looks like, he told me once. Biology doesn't obligate you to accept abuse. I created my own family. Priya and Alexander and our friends, people who chose me and whom I chose back. My parents called occasionally, awkward conversations that never lasted long. Jessica and I exchanged texts on birthdays, brief, surface level, the relationship two strangers might have. It was enough. I graduated summa cum laude, double majoring in psychology and neuroscience with honors thesis on trauma recovery and resilience. My parents came to graduation, sitting far in the back, leaving before the reception. Alexander's parents, though, they sat front row, cheered like I was their daughter, hosted a dinner party that night to celebrate. You did it, Alexander whispered as we danced at the party, his arms around me, the future spread out before us like an open road. We did it, I corrected, because that was the real lesson I'd learned from dying and coming back. You couldn't survive alone. You couldn't thrive in isolation. The key to winning wasn't revenge. It was finding your people, building your tribe, creating a life so full and beautiful that the people who'd hurt you became footnotes in your story instead of the main plot. Jessica would always be my sister. That biological fact couldn't be changed, but she didn't get to be my family anymore. She didn't get to define my worth or limit my happiness. I died at 19 in my first life, broken and defeated. In this life, at 22, I was graduating from Princeton with a full scholarship and a job offer from a top research hospital and a boyfriend who loved me and a future so bright it hurt to look at directly. I'd let Jessica take my prom date and I'd shown up with hers. But the real victory wasn't that moment of triumph at prom. It was every day after. Every choice I made to build myself up instead of tear her down. Every moment I chose joy over bitterness. The real victory was living well. 5 years after graduation, I'm Dr. Emma Foster, running a trauma recovery program at a major hospital. I've published 3 papers on sibling abuse and family scapegoating. I've helped hundreds of patients reclaim their lives from the people who tried to destroy them. Alexander proposed on the beach where we'd kissed that night after graduation. The same beach where in another life I'd died, never knowing what it meant to be truly loved. We got married in a small ceremony, just our closest friends, his parents, and a few colleagues. My parents weren't invited. Jessica sent a card, no gift, just a note that said, "Congratulations, you deserve every happiness." I kept the card, not because I forgave her, but because it was acknowledgement. She saw what she'd done. She understood what she'd lost. Sometimes I wonder what my first life was for. Why I had to die and come back. Why I had to live through the pain twice. But then I think about the patients I've helped, the research I've done, the life I've built. I think about Alexander and Priya and all the people I've chosen to be my family. Maybe I died so I could learn to really live. Maybe I came back so I could show other people that you can escape, that you can heal, that the people who hurt you don't get to write your ending. I let my sister take my prom date. She regretted it when I arrived with hers, but more importantly, I arrived. I survived. I thrived. And in the end, that was the best revenge of all.